Okay, so the squat. So I think this is interesting because I mean the French contrast that you've popularized, and then you and Chris's book that went out maybe 6 years ago, the football triphasic with all the the French contrast stuff in there. That's
Yeah.
been a big. That's changed a lot for me. I really that book was a big. If I had to list like the top five
Yeah.
training paradigms that changed how I was doing things, that one was a big one. And so that. But what's interesting is what you were just talking about was a little bit of a steer off of that initial system because like if you did a triphasic set, it would be like all maybe vertical based. Like it's a squat, it's a hurdle hop, it's a
Sure.
speed squat, and it's a assisted, all vertical. And now where this is changing is now you're throwing in the horizontal work, the posterior chain work in the same like I guess superset. And to me, that's where I see this being the biggest like turn off of what we typically would do because we like to match up these stimuli, right? We're like,
Right.
oh, I'm on squat patterning, or I'm
I
on
know.
another thing I've done as I do my other variation. I don't know if you guys have done this. At least this is what I had like I don't know. I guess I called it horizontal, but it wasn't really because your lifts were still vertical. But I would do like a clean pull or a hex deadlift, and then a bound, and then like a fast snatch or kettlebell swing, and then another type of running type movement or
Sure.
something.
Yes.
So that was my horizontal version, but it wasn't quite. It was not like doing a glute.
Well, to bring up your point, Joel, I yes, I do that. And for example, let's say, so right now, I'll just give you a quick example of one series of 6 exercises, or it might be 7. Actually, I put 8 in my performance cycle. So let's say I did a single leg safety split squat. Then I do my hurdle hop, which then goes into, as soon as I'm done with my hurdle hop, Joel, I do a 20-yard sprint, right? Then I went over the glute ham, and I paired the glute ham with I did the glute ham, and then they get off, and then they do a flying primetime Dion with a bent knee, because the glute ham, you're bending your knee. So I'm adding the hamstring in there too. And if people don't know, what else they call prime times, Deion Sander
Yeah,
touchdown runs.
straight leg bounds. I think a lot of people
Yeah.
are familiar with that term too.
Yeah. Straight leg bounding. So then that's the 5th exercise, is the prime times, right? And then I might go do another vertical jump to simulate some of the accelerated bands from the ceiling, right? And then I'll go back to a reverse hyper after the vertical jump at the bands, and it might be a split squat jump. And then I do the reverse hyper, and then I finish with some straight leg prime times. So your knee's not bent when you slightly bent; they're completely straight. And it's kind of what you're talking about right there. I just added 8 exercises. There's no rush. They just sequence through. Now, Joel, what I'll do this summer, I only do 2 to 3 sets when I do that in season right now. This summer, what I'll do is I call it I think I mentioned it in triphasic too, a biometric parametric, where I'll basically do a vertical jump before, and then we do that cycle, and then I retest vertical jump, and the vertical jump is actually, that vertical jump before they start the next set is going to tell me how much fatigue level we've hit, so like an auto-regulatory, hands on the hips, vertical jump, and so forth. Yeah. So with that cycling, now, should I give away a little secret
If
on
you
that
want
one?
to, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I'll include it in the triphasic, but Joe, when I was fortunate that I had some really advanced Kessler force plates that were like, it would tell forces in like 6 degrees, right? So the 6-degree force plate. So it would point an arrow. And when I was doing force plate testing years ago, 20 years ago, when I started triphasic, Joe, what I saw was quad dominant athletes, when they did their vertical jumps, they jump forward, right? And I was like, why are these certain athletes jumping forward? And then I was like, these are quad dominant athletes, obviously. So when I say this, so when you walk in my weight room, instead of starting at squats, I have some of my athletes that are quad dominant, and I know who are quad dominant anyway, start, Joel, at the glute ham hyper. Because I even saw some of those quad dominant athletes do their squats and hurdle hops, and actually when they ran, they would undulate. So I would start my first set with my quad dominant athletes at the rear posterior chain exercise, and then cycle through everything, which is actually better, Joel, for my weight room functioning. You know what I mean? So everyone starts,
Oh, yeah,
a couple
yeah,
people.
for groups and stuff.
So yeah, so my point to you is, so how could here's a way that you can hack it. So Joel, you get everybody on the line, Joel, and you have them hands on the hips, close their eyes, because the eyes will adjust. you actually could use a quiet room, because the vestibular system will help them adjust their flight when they jump. But the athletes that when they jump, have them jump 3 times with their eyes closed and land, and your quad dominant athletes will have drifted forward. So if you got 10 kids, you take 5 that drifted forward the most, and you send them over to the glute ham to start that whole cycle. The other 5 go to the squats, and it's pretty interesting. You know what I mean? But I caught that many years ago. I've been waiting for like force plate experts to tell me this, but I haven't heard any of them. And I'll be honest with you, I didn't catch the forward where the engineering students that were here working with me, because I couldn't run these force plates. I mean, there was no way.
They're complicated.
Well, back then, especially. Now they got nice software systems. But I mean, I got 100 pages of Excel files. I'm like, what do you want me to do with these? Like, I don't know. You know what I mean? Of all these numbers. And they were like, okay, well, these kids seem to be jumping forward. And I'm like, all right, I looked at their names. I was like, well, what the heck? Like, these are all my quad dominant, obviously. I mean, monster quads, those type of athletes. So that's a secret that's a way for people to hack where to start them in that cycle.
I love that. I like that. I mean, it makes sense to me with the vertical and the quad dominant. I always feel like it's people who couldn't time up their posterior chain of their glutes very well to hit that crack in the vertical vector, especially if they don't have a target to jump to. So I as you said, I was like, yeah, that's right. Because honestly, I didn't even think about it till you mentioned it there. But I'm like, yes, I've seen that a bunch of times. I've just never actually sat and been like, yes, this is quad and posterior chain dominant. It makes sense.
Yeah. So the beauty of that is it's just, well, theoretically, to make it work, you need to probably do it. The radio can't be on, because people will actually pick up sounds coming off the wall to help them stabilize and adjust their position so that they go more vertical. But you close their eyes, hands on hips, jump up, and 2, 3, 4 jumps, you'll see them just start drifting forward. And those are your more quad dominant athletes and send over. Yeah. But you are right, though. Sometimes it can also be the sequencing, right, of the muscles. So regardless, it doesn't hurt anybody that's not quad dominant to start somewhere else in that whole sequence, right? So you may just get, if you got 20 kids and there's only 4 that are quad dominant, then you might just pick another 7 to start somewhere else. You know what I mean? Just so that whole cycling that I'm talking about runs through your weight room really easy. And I'll be honest with you, Joel, it's honestly, it's better to do it that way with less equipment. So coaches with a small weight room actually might find they may be able to run more athletes through with that performance cycling, and you're doing a better job for the athletes, in my opinion, right? Look, and coaches be like, oh, Cal's told me I got it wrong again. I'm like, look, people, Cal got it wrong so many times. And I didn't break an egg there, right? Because I did 4 sets of an exercise and we move on. But like, I'm going, I was just less optimal, Joel. It's like, and live with it. But now I found it. I hope to share it with people and they move on and help, make it better. So.
Yeah, the overarching theme I'm getting is it's a big step away from, I don't know, it's almost like before, like you would define old school strength and conditioning as pattern centric. We're going to work squat pattern. We're going to work hinge pattern. And yours is we're going to work sprint pattern, and whatever sprint pattern you need, like your quad dominant, let's start with glute ham in this cycle. And you're always throwing the thing in there that's going to keep the sprint pattern at the premium. And one thing I like that Chris Corfus has said in the past, he's like, athletes who squat a lot tend to sprint like they squat. And so it's exactly what you're saying. You do those 4 sets, and even though you have hurdle hops in there, it's still a squat pattern. If you did the squat before it, you might set the hurdle hop up, honestly, to be maybe even less elastic than it could be too, or whatever. I mean, there's different ways to hurdle hop, but I can totally see that. So I love how it's a sprint-centric way of assigning the work.
You're exactly right versus a pattern-centric, right? That's well put. I think you explained it for the listeners really well. Instead of just working on patterns, but again, Joel, that's what powerlifting and weightlifting people need to do is pattern work, but not my athletes.